Hi, everyone. This is Jason Galisatus with a special PenTV edition on race in San Mateo County. And today we're joined by a very special guest, Belmont Councilmember Davina Hurt. Welcome, Davina. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited about our conversation today.
Likewise. And we know that the country is right now involved in a tectonic shift in the way that we discussed race. And that's not limited to CNN and Fox News, but it's happening in households as well. And you recently published a really powerful op-ed in the San Mateo Daily Journal explaining this shift in your own home. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the conversations that you're having in your family.
Sure. So I'm glad you received that article. It was directly from the heart. And I would say that it wasn't just one major event that happened, but multiple conversations over the time here at home with my daughter, just wondering, what is it that we're doing? How is it that we're living? She is at that ripe age of 15 as a teen, and her independence is so pronounced. And so she's this brilliant, witty thinker. And as much as I love the fact that she believes everything I say, she too is questioning, what is the path we're living by? How are we conducting our lives? And how are we bringing everyone along in this shift of thinking as you've discussed it? And we've had some really difficult conversations, but all conversations around the idea of equity and how do we make a world or a public environment where everybody, regardless of their means, can do well. Luckily for Annika, she has grown up in a household where we were able to do different things for her. But not everybody is in that place. And so, as a civic leader, while I'm always advocating for the community as a whole, and all those different individuals within there, how am I also advocating in my private life when I'm with Annika and I'm taking her to her events? Oftentimes, half the battle is exposure. And so, how do we expose more people to the possibilities of a good life? With the little
Right.
means that we have to get it done. Broke the back of thinking, how can we live differently? How can we focus on the things that really matter? And realizing that a change for the collective could be a great thing. And we have this opportunity to reset the button. And as many folks know, the public realm is kind of the space where it's a great equalizer. And so, again, my daughter just asking those questions, Mom, what can you do in the public space to bring attention to what's happening in the national arena and figuring out what, as a city, on a local, very micro level, we can do to make things better for everybody.
And what are some of the things, or how do you see issues of race play out at the local level? And what are some remedies you hope will come out of this broader conversation at the national level?
So when we talk about issues of race, I think we talk about people having different experiences and being treated differently, sometimes just by the way that they look. And so at the local level, it's trying to break down those barriers and say, let's look beyond the color of one's skin, but let's look about the things and the experiences that we uniquely enjoy. We all want public safety. We all want public health. How do we get there together, even though we have different backgrounds and different experiences? At the local level, I would say that there's less talk about race and more talk about those things that we really need in common. And we need infrastructure, we need roads, we need to be able to have drinking water. And the key, however, is to make sure that everybody has those things in our cities. And this is the difficult part because there are definitely been people left behind, and we're discovering that even with the COVID-19 numbers, that there are pockets in our community that need more attention, more support in a very complex, multicultural, international, global environment. Um, and so that's the job and the challenge I look forward to doing here at in Belmont.
It's really interesting that you raised the COVID pandemic because a lot of people don't necessarily make that connection. But what we're seeing certainly is disproportionate impacts of COVID on Black and Latino communities specifically, with not just infection rates being higher, but also these families bearing a higher burden as far as the economic impacts of COVID. So, why do you think that is? Why are we seeing such disparate outcomes among Black and Latino community members?
I think we're seeing the reflection of structural inequities that have been around for a really long time, and it's now catching up. African Americans and Latinos are always juggling health and economics. Some are living in environments that are difficult to breathe in. Some are living in environments where they have to drive to work. And what we're seeing in COVID-19, there are a lot of people, and if you look at the statistics, are able to stay home. But people of color are having to go into work day in and day out, exposing themselves to more issues.
So, one of the other issues that's surfacing locally is the issue of policing in communities. What ought to be the role of the police in modern society, in your perspective?
So, one of the greatest issues in cities, as I said earlier, is public safety and public health. And so when we think of police, we think about them protecting and serving and fulfilling safety and health in our everyday environments. And that protection is really centered around crime control, peacekeeping, the de escalation of situations amongst people just kind of by the law of authority. And it's an abstract idea, I think. And so, what is great about this time is we're actually digging in to see if what we think police are doing are actually what's happening out in our streets. And I mean, everybody cannot be mistaken about the history of policing in America and how those experiences and long term culture, in some situations, impacts different departments. And so, I read once like every power to do good is also power to do harm, and everything where we can save lives can destroy it. And so, police have in modern society this awesome power that can go awry if it's not constantly checked, reviewed, if it's only left to a few individuals, if it's a culture that is not fighting for justice for all. And so today it's clear that the public is asking questions and they believe that that trust has been broken. And it's our job as leaders to question, ask where we are, where we're going, what we need to do to be better. And it's something that every day in the emails I respond to, I'm reminding folks that we are trying to be better. And so we created a public safety and health committee to look into our policing. And what are those roles? What are the roles with teens and children and schools? Should they be different than that which are out on the streets? And so we're excited, Belmont, in the opportunity to have a conversation. And policing is important. It's important to our community members and it's important to our way of life. But how do we improve and make it better? And it's the interesting next steps that can be great for our communities. And I look forward to taking on.
One of the other topics that you raised in your op-ed was the issue of housing and housing access. Um, do you believe right now that we are achieving the values of equitable access to housing in the peninsula, and what more can we do to improve that?
In this more positive future, we're thinking, how can we have all members or community members live within the city of Belmont? And so that is making opportunity for different types of housing. And I think that all of the peninsula has now pivoted to being open to addressing a real serious need, which is people should not be driving hours upon hours to come into our community to work. But not only is it great for our environment, but it's good for our children in the future if we live in the cities that we work or not that far from. And that means we need to build a little bit. And it also means that we have to create a balance in our economics and our opportunities. And here in Belmont, we're currently working on a 100% affordable housing project. And that's been very unheard of for our community, but it's necessary. And if I could have done it yesterday, I would have done it 2 days before that. I mean, we are really running after trying to support our different community members.
Just ask a clarifying question. Do you then view a connection between advancing racial justice and seeing more types of housing being introduced in Belmont specifically, but of course across the peninsula?
Absolutely. I mean, we believe very much so that it is important that different people have different options. And as we know, there are some people in our community that are struggling and they cannot afford the $1 million+ home. So multi-housing is a way to also address some of the needs that African Americans, Latinos have. I mean, the security of a home is the ultimate important thing in one's life. Shelter, a place to go to call your own, and being able to create different types of opportunities so people have shelter and home is so important. And it's what I do and work on every day.
Great. Well, you are one of the few Black elected leaders in San Mateo County, and you've been fighting this fight for many years now. What advice would you have for younger folks who are looking to get involved and who want to advance racial justice in their own communities?
Well, I get excited when younger folks say, "Show me the pathway. What did you do?" And I always say, you need to discover your passion. What is it that you talk about all the time? What is it that interests you and you gravitate to? And then I say, knowledge is power. Like, research, investigate, talk to people that are in that area. Search out who are all the stakeholders, have conversations with them. And then once you've kind of gone that way, learn the history, because I tell you, oftentimes people email me and say, "Why aren't we doing this?" And I say, "But we are doing that. It didn't work. So now we're pivoting this way." So having that kind of historical knowledge of the issues that you're passionate about and getting up to speed just helps push what it is that you want to see better even further. And lastly, I think it's really important to realize that it's going to be a long struggle, and you need to persevere through 2 steps forward, maybe 3 steps back, 4 steps forward. I mean, the life of an activist is to persevere. And, it's important to read the struggles of other activists and other people who have been fighting hard for justice. But this time right now, I think young people especially have the ear of many leaders, many people who are decision makers in their communities, and they can stand up and speak up for what's important to them. And this is a time to unite people, and uniting people around issues is important, and it's something young folks can do, especially right now.
Davina Hurt, thank you for joining us today and speaking to what is important to you. We appreciate your service and for joining us today. That's all of our 3-part series on race in San Mateo County. We appreciate your watching, and thank you, Davina, for joining us one more time.
Thank you for having me.